The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewports of the small human patrol ship. Ethan sat in the cockpit, his eyes half focused on the black void ahead and half on the quiet hum of the engines. Space had a way of feeling empty, but tonight it felt heavier. He had been patrolling the neutral zone for weeks. Nothing ever happened here. Just lonely nights, sensor sweeps, and the occasional passing freighter. But then, the signal came. It was faint at first, buried in static. He almost ignored it, thinking it was just interference from a nearby asteroid belt. But the voice made him stop. Please, anyone. This is Queen Erin of the Let Hurry Empire. My daughter, my only child, was taken from me during the border raids. I have searched the stars for years. She is alive. I know she is alive. If anyone can hear me, help me bring her home. Ethan's hands froze on the controls. The message repeated, carrying a tone of desperation that could not be faked. He knew about the Let Hurry Empire. They were a proud alien people known for their elegance and strict traditions. Their queen was a respected leader. But stories had spread over the years about her missing daughter. Some said she had died. Others whispered that she had been sold to enemies. The signal wasn't even meant for human space. It had probably been bouncing across relay stations for months, but Ethan could hear it clearly now, and for some reason he couldn't turn away from it. He checked his orders. Officially, he was supposed to report the message to command and move on. It wasn't his mission, and it definitely wasn't safe. But as he listened again, he thought about the pain in that voice, about how much courage it must have taken for a queen to send such a personal plea to strangers. Computer, he said quietly, trace the origin of that signal. The navigation display flickered, drawing a faint line through the void. It led toward the edge of Vor's Syndicate space, a region notorious for piracy, slavery, and black market trade. No official rescue mission would go there without a fleet, and even then it was risky. Ethan leaned back in his seat. This is a bad idea, he muttered to himself. But the thought of doing nothing made his stomach twist. If it were his own family out there, if someone had taken his sister or his mother, wouldn't he want someone to try, even if the odds were against them? He switched the ship to stealth mode. The journey ahead was long and dangerous. Human ships weren't welcome anywhere near the Vor's Syndicate. Their warlord saw humans as troublesome, too stubborn to break, too clever to catch easily. Ethan would have to move carefully, avoiding patrols and keeping his ship's energy signature low. As he prepared to leave the neutral zone, he played the Queen's message again. It wasn't just the desperation. There was strength in her voice, a kind of determination that reminded him of soldiers he had served with. He imagined the daughter, maybe a young girl, maybe almost grown, being kept somewhere she didn't belong. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought her mother had given up on her. Hang on, kid, he said under his breath. I'm coming. Over the next 2 days, Ethan studied maps of Syndicate space. He cross-referenced rumors from his time in the service with updated smuggling routes. The Syndicate's territory was like a nest of vipers. One wrong move, and they'd close in. But he found a pattern in the freighter movements, a route that might take him close without drawing attention. On the 3rd day, his ship drifted into a shadowed region of space, where no official beacons shone. The stars seemed dimmer here. Signals were jammed or scrambled. It was the kind of place where a person could vanish without a trace. He passed the wreckage of an old cargo ship scavenged clean long ago. A lone escape pod floated. Nearby, its hull scorched. Inside, he found only dust. Hours later, his sensors picked up a faint energy trail. It matched the kind of power signatures used in slave transports. He followed it, keeping his distance. The trail led to a small, unmarked station orbiting a dead moon. From a distance, it looked like a cluster of rusting metal and scavenged parts, but the heat signatures told him it was active. He zoomed in with the ships. Long-range cameras. Alien guards patrolled the docking platforms, their armor patched together from different factions. Ships came and went, none of them marked with legal registry codes. Ethan knew he had found something. He shut down the ship's main systems and let it drift, keeping only minimal power for life support. In the dim light, he leaned forward, watching. Then he saw her. She was small compared to the guards, her movements careful and guarded. Her skin shimmered faintly under the station's dim lights, a soft, pale tone that matched the Lily description. She carried a tray of food, walking between cells, but the way she glanced over her shoulder told him she was not free. Ethan's heart tightened. It had to be her. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind. My daughter, my only child, was taken. I have searched the stars for years. He could see the defiance in the girl's eyes, even from a distance. She was surviving, but she was trapped, and if she stayed here much longer, she might never get out. Ethan powered up his system slowly, careful not to trigger the station scanners. He would need a plan. A direct attack would bring every guard in the sector down on him, but there were other ways. As the station turned slowly in its orbit, Ethan's mind worked fast, mapping entry points, guard shifts, and blind spots in the patrol routes. He didn't know how long he had before they moved her, but one thing was certain. He couldn't leave without her. In the cold silence of space, Ethan made a silent promise to the Queen he had never met, and to the daughter who didn't yet know him. I'm going to get you home. Ethan had seen hostile space before, but the Vor Syndicate's territory felt different. It wasn't just dangerous. It was alive with watching eyes. Every shadow might hide a pirate ship. Every blinking light might be a scanner. He knew one wrong move could mean capture, or worse. His ship drifted close to the dead moon, where the unmarked station orbited. For 2 days, he had studied the patrol patterns. The Syndicate wasn't organized like a military. They were unpredictable, but even criminals got lazy. There were moments, small windows, when the guard ships drifted too far or sensors pointed the wrong way. Those were his chances. He sat in the dim cockpit, running through his plan again. This wasn't going to be a fight. It would be quick, quiet, and precise. First, he needed to get inside the station without setting off alarms. The docking ports were heavily guarded, but he had noticed a damaged maintenance ring near the lower section. It was too small for large ships, but his small human patrol craft could just fit if he adjusted the landing thrusters. He pulled on his helmet and activated the stealth field. It wouldn't make him invisible, but it would hide most of his ship's heat signature. With slow, careful movements, he guided the craft toward the maintenance ring. As he neared the station, his sensors lit up with faint signals. Drones, small and fast, moving between docking bays. He killed the engines completely, letting the ship drift like a piece of space junk. The drones passed without reacting. The maintenance ring loomed ahead, its outer plating scarred and rusted. A faint light glowed inside, probably from emergency backup systems. He eased the ship forward, the hull scraping slightly against the metal edge as he forced it into the tight opening. Inside, the space was cramped and filled with floating debris, old tools, scraps of wiring, and frozen water droplets. He shut down the ship systems, leaving it hidden in the shadows. From here, he would have to go on foot. Ethan moved through the airlock and into the station's guts. It smelled faintly of burnt metal and old fuel. The narrow maintenance corridors were empty, lit only by flickering lights. He kept his steps silent, using the noise of distant machinery to mask his movements. From somewhere above, he heard alien voices, sharp guttural sound that carried a tone of command. He didn't need to understand the words to know they were giving orders. He passed an open grate and saw a group of guards in mismatched armor, carrying crates. Their weapons were heavy plasma rifles, overkill for guarding cargo, which meant the contents were valuable. But Ethan's eyes were drawn to something else. Beyond the guards, through a narrow passage, he caught a glimpse of a small figure, moving quickly, pale skin, silver hair that shimmered faintly under the lights. It was her, the girl, Princess Laura, though she didn't know he was. Here was carrying a container of water toward a line of cells. The guards barely looked at her, treating her like any other servant. Ethan felt a rush of determination. She was alive. She was right there, but getting her out wouldn't be simple. The cells were near the central chamber, and the only way to reach them without passing through heavily guarded areas was a series of old maintenance tunnels. Problem was, those tunnels hadn't been used in years, and might not even be safe. Still, it was his best shot. He slipped into a side corridor, scanning the walls until he found a rusted hatch marked with faded maintenance symbols. It creaked loudly when he forced it open, and he froze, listening. No alarms, no footsteps. Inside, the tunnel was dark and cold. Patches of frost clung to the walls, and broken cables floated loosely in the low gravity. He moved carefully, using handholds to guide himself. Forward. At one point, the tunnel narrowed so much he had to remove his gear pack and push it ahead of him. Dust drifted through the beam of his helmet light, and the silence was so deep he could hear his own heartbeat. Finally, he reached a grated panel overlooking the cell area. Through it, he saw Laura again kneeling beside an older alien woman in one of the cells, passing her a small piece of bread. Even here, she was trying to help others. The guards at the far end were distracted, arguing over something. Ethan reached for the small cutting tool on his belt and began slicing through the grate. Each spark made him flinch, but the noise was swallowed by the hum of the station's engines. When the last piece of metal gave way, he lowered himself silently to the floor. He stayed in the shadows, moving closer until he was just a few feet away from her. He whispered. She spun around, eyes wide. For a moment, she looked ready to run, but then she froze, her gaze flicking over his human face. "Who are you?" she whispered back, her voice trembling. "Your mother sent me," Ethan said softly. "Queen Erin. She's alive. She's been searching for you all this time." Her lips parted in shock. My mother." He nodded. "I'm here to take you home, but we have to move now." Fear and hope battled in her eyes. She glanced toward the guards. "We can't go that way." "We're not," Ethan replied, pointing toward the tunnel above. "We'll take the long way." Before she could answer, one of the guards shouted something. Another had noticed the missing grate. "Go!" Ethan hissed, helping her climb into the tunnel. He followed right behind. Sealing the hatch as blaster fire lit the corridor below. The two of them crawled quickly through the narrow passage, the sound of boots and angry voices echoing behind them. LRA's breathing was quick, but she kept moving. When they finally emerged into the maintenance ring where his ship waited, Ethan opened the airlock and pushed her inside. The moment the door shut, he jumped into the pilot's seat. As the engines roared to life, alarms blared throughout the station. Ships were already launching to chase them. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "Hold on, Princess. This is going to get rough." The instant Ethan's engines roared to life, the entire station seemed awake like a disturbed hornet's nest. Docking clamps disengaged with a loud metallic thud, and warning lights painted the walls of the maintenance ring in sharp flashes of red. Laura clung to the seat beside him, her wide eyes locked on the view ahead. Outside, Syndicate ships were already launching from the main bays. Sleek, fast attack craft designed for quick kills. Ethan's patrol ship was nimble, but it wasn't built for prolonged dogfights, especially not against a swarm. "Hold tight," Ethan told her, flicking a series of switches. "We're not going to fight them. We're going to outrun them." The first enemy fighter shot past, its engines leaving a faint blue trail. Moments later, blaster fire lit up the darkness. Ethan twisted the controls sharply, rolling the ship into a tight spin that sent the blast sailing harmlessly into empty space. LRA gasped, gripping the edge of her seat. "How many are there?" "Too many," Ethan replied, checking the sensors. "But they'll have a harder time if we make things messy." He dove toward the moon's surface, skimming so low that the hull groaned from the gravity pull. Chunks of rock and metallic debris scattered in the thin atmosphere. Enemy fighters followed, their weapons firing wildly, but Ethan weaved between ridges and canyons, forcing him to slow down or risk smashing into the ground. They're not used to flying this close to the surface. Ethan said, "We are," just as one of the fighters lined up a shot. Ethan pulled the ship straight up, letting the attacker overshoot and slam into a cliff. The explosion lit the dark sky behind them, but the victory was short-lived. 3 more ships were closing, and he opened a side panel on his console, revealing an old piece of human tech, flare pods. "Time to give them something else to look at," he muttered, firing the pods into the air. Bright sparks scattered in all directions, scrambling the enemy's targeting sensors for a few seconds. It was all he needed to break free of the moon's pull and rocket back into open space. The Syndicate ships didn't give up. They spread out in formation, trying to trap him before he could reach hyperspace range. LRA turned to him, her voice shaking. "You came all this way. Just for me?" "Why?" "Because someone has." "To," Ethan said without hesitation, "your mother never stopped looking for you. She's been sending out messages for years. I just happened to hear one." Her eyes softened, but before she could say more, a warning beat cut through the cockpit. "Missiles incoming." The ship's computer announced. Ethan's hands moved quickly over controls. "Hang on." The patrol ship twisted sharply to the right, diving toward a belt of massive asteroids. The missiles followed, weaving through the rocks in pursuit. He darted between tumbling boulders the size of buildings, the ship's shield sparking as small fragments scraped past. The missiles tried to match his movements, but the dense asteroid field worked in his favor. One missile clipped a rock and exploded. Another was caught in the shock wave. The last one still followed, its lock unwavering. "Come on," Ethan muttered. He guided the ship toward a particularly large asteroid, then cut the engines just long enough to let the missile overtake them. At the last second, he reignited the thrusters and ducked behind the asteroid. The missile slammed into the rock and erupted in a bright flash, sending fragments spinning outward. "That's 3 less things trying to kill us," he said, exhaling slowly. LRA was still, holding on to the seat, but her breathing had steadied. "You're very good at this." "Been doing it a while," Ethan said with a faint smile. Their reprieve didn't last long. The asteroid field ended, and ahead lay open space, and the enemy's main pursuit squadron. "We can't outrun them in open space," Ethan said, scanning the area. "But maybe we can disappear." He set a course for a nearby debris cloud, a massive field of wrecked ships from an old battle. Pieces of hull and shattered engines drifted silently, forming a maze of jagged metal. As they slipped inside, Ethan powered down most of the systems. Again, without the heat signature, they would look like just another chunk of space junk. The enemy ship swept past, scanning briefly before continuing on. Only after their signals faded from the sensors did Ethan bring the systems back online. "Are we safe now?" LRA asked. "For now," Ethan said, "but they'll regroup. We need to put as much distance between us and this sector as possible." He set the ship's coordinates for a long jump toward the edge of the fairy space. The hyperdrive hummed to life, the stars stretching into long streaks as they made the jump. For the first time since leaving the station, the cockpit was quiet. LRA sat back, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I thought," she began, her voice low, "I thought my mother would have forgotten me by now, or that she couldn't find me." "She never gave up," Ethan said firmly. "And now, you're going home." Her eyes glistened, but she smiled faintly. "Thank you, Ethan." He gave a small nod. "We're not there yet. There's still a long way to go, and the Syndicate isn't done chasing us." As the hyperdrive carried them into the dark, Ethan's thoughts were already on the next steps, avoiding patrols, finding safe refueling points, and making sure LRA stayed hidden until they reached the Queen. He had promised to bring her home, and he intended to keep that promise no matter how bad many enemies stood in the way. Somewhere out there, Queen Erin was waiting in soon. She would see her daughter again. The hyperdrive's low hum filled the small cockpit. Outside, streaks of light stretched endlessly, giving the illusion of calm. But Ethan knew better. Calm in. Space was never permanent. They had been traveling for hours without trouble. LRA sat quietly in the co-pilot's chair, gazing at the star lines, her hands fidgeted in her lap, betraying her unease. Ethan had seen that look before, the face of someone free for the first time in years, but unsure if it would last. "We'll get there," Ethan said softly without looking at her. "I want to believe you," LRA replied. "But the Syndicate has so many ships. What if they catch us before we reach my mother? Then we make sure they don't," Ethan said, simply adjusting the navigation settings. A blinking light on the console interrupted their quiet moment. It was a long-range scanner picking up an incoming signal. Ethan frowned. It was a transmission, but encrypted. He hesitated, then played it through the speakers. "Human vessel." A voice said, sharp and clipped. "This is Captain DRA of the Corvus. We have urgent information about your passenger. Respond immediately." LRA's eyes widened. "Corvus? That's a mercenary ship. I've heard of them." Ethan's jaw tightened. Mercenaries work for anyone who paid well enough, and they're probably not calling to offer help. He cut the transmission and altered their course. But minutes later, another blip appeared on the scanner, larger this time and closing in fast. "They found us," Ethan muttered. "Hang on." He pushed the engines to maximum, braking from the hyperlane into normal space. The sudden shift sent the stars snapping back into pinpoints of light. A massive ship emerged from the shadows. A black, jagged vessel bristling with weapons. Its hull bore no official insignia, but its presence was enough to make the hair on Ethan's neck rise. "Human ship, the mercenary captains." Voice came again, this time with a cold edge. "The Syndicate offers a high price for the girl. Hand her over and you, live." LRA's grip on the chair tightened. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he activated the ship's shield systems and began plotting a new escape vector. "You're making a mistake," the captain warned. "Your ship is small. Our weapons will tear it apart." "Maybe," Ethan said under his breath, "but you'll have to catch me first." He dove toward a nearby nebula, a swirling cloud of blue and green gas that pulsed faintly with electrical storms. The mercenary ship followed, confident in its superior firepower. As they entered the nebula, static crackled over. The comms and visibility dropped to near zero. Ethan switched to manual controls, relying on instinct and experience rather than scanners. The nebula's dense. Gases scrambled targeting systems, making it harder for the enemy to get a lock. Suddenly, lightning arced through the clouds, striking the mercenary ship's shields. The blast didn't destroy it, but it bought Ethan precious seconds to slip deeper into the storm. "How can you see anything in here?" LRA asked, holding on to console. "I can't," Ethan admitted with a small grin, "but I know they can't either." They weaved through the shifting colors, using the bursts of lightning to mask their movements. Once they were deep enough, Ethan powered down everything, except life support. The ship drifted silently, hidden in the storm's heart. For long minutes, they waited. The mercenary ship passed nearby, scanning, but the nebula's interference kept their sensors blind. Eventually, their signal faded and the danger passed. Ethan brought the engines back online, guiding the ship out of the storm. Once they were clear, LRA let out a shaky breath. I thought that was it." "Not yet," Ethan said. "But we have to be smart. We can't take the main lanes anymore. Too many eyes over the next." Day, Ethan charted a new course through unprolled systems, wild regions of space, where few dared to travel. Here they faced new challenges. drifting minefields left from old wars unstable, wormholes, and strange alien creatures that move through the void like living shadows. In one system, they stopped at a hidden refueling station run by an old human, trader named Vance. Ethan had worked with him before, and he trusted him mostly. Vance greeted them with a grin. Long way from home. Ethan, who's the passenger? Someone important, Ethan said. Simply, and someone the wrong people are looking for. Vance nodded slowly. Then, you'd better move quick. Word's been spreading. There's a bounty out for a human ship, carrying a Lethari girl. LRA, look down, clearly uncomfortable. Ethan just said, thanks for the warning, and finished refueling as quickly as possible. As they prepared to leave, Vance pulled Ethan aside. Watch, you're back. Bounties bring all kinds out of the shadows. Pirates, mercs, even old friends. They departed the station, under silent engines, heading for the last stretch before Lethari space. But the quiet didn't last. Only hours later, Ethan's sensors picked up another pursuer, this time a fast strike craft. It wasn't syndicate or mercenary. It bore the colors of a rival Lethari faction. Why would your own people be after you? Ethan asked, frowning. Not. All in the Empire want me back. LRA said softly. Some would rather my mother never see me again. The strike craft closed in, demanding they stop. Ethan ignored them and prepared for another run. He glanced at Lara. We're close. Once we cross into your mother's territory, they can't touch us. But until then, it's going to be rough. And with that, he pushed the throttle forward, the ship leaping into a desperate race toward Lythe space, where help and danger both waited. The moment Ethan pushed the throttle, the ship roared forward, leaving streaks of blue ion trails in the darkness. Behind them, the Lethari strike craft stayed close, its sleek design built for speed and interception. Every few seconds, warning beeps echoed in the cockpit. Enemy, weapons locking on. They're faster than the mercenaries, Ethan muttered, glancing at the controls. We can't outrun them forever. Lara gripped the armrest, her voice tight. How far are we from my mother's space? 2 jumps, Ethan said. But they'll try to stop us before we make the first. The strike craft fired. Bright plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, missing by only meters. Ethan rolled the ship into a sharp spin, dodging another volley. He could feel the strain in the controls. The patrol ship wasn't made for endless evasive maneuvers like this. We'll have to change the game, he said, scanning the area. His eyes landed on a cluster of shattered moons ahead. Jagged debris from the ancient collision formed a twisting maze of rock and ice. We're going in there, he told. Her LRA's eyes widened. Isn't that dangerous? Yes, Ethan said, but less dangerous than letting them hit us in open space. The patrol ship dove into the debris field. Massive chunks of rock drifted slowly, some glowing faintly with frozen gases. Ethan was between them with quick, precise movements, forcing the strike craft to follow through tight turns. The enemy's speed advantage became a weakness here. One wrong move, and the maze would smash them into solid rock. Still, they kept coming. Ethan tapped the control and deployed a handful of old human micromines, small, almost invisible devices that floated silently in the field. Seconds later, a sharp explosion shook the void. The strike craft dodged most, but one mine detonated close enough to scorch its shields. That'll slow them down, Ethan said. But as he cleared the last stretch of debris, the sensors lit up again. 2 more ships were inbound. From the syndicate this time, they're closing in from both sides. LRA said, panic in her voice. Then we hold them off here. Ethan replied, his tone steady. He angled the ship toward a narrow canyon between 2 massive moon fragments. The space was so tight, the patrol ship's wings almost scraped the rock. It was a good place for an ambush if he could use it right. As the strike craft entered the canyon behind them, Ethan cut the engines, letting the ship drift. The enemy closed a gap, certain they had cornered him. At the last moment, Ethan powered up full thrust and launched straight upward, skimming the canyon wall. The sudden movement caused the pursuing ships to adjust too late. One slammed into the rock, breaking apart in a burst of fire, but the second strike craft made it through. Before it could fire, the two Syndicate ships emerged on the other end, trapping Ethan in the middle. Plasma blasts lit up the space, forcing him into tight rolls and dives. LRA's voice broke through the chaos. Is there any way we can call my mother? Not without giving away our exact position, everyone, Ethan said. But then he thought of something. He had a small encoded beacon, something only the Ledhari Royal Fleet could track. Using it meant risking every enemy in the sector finding them, too. But if they didn't, there was no way to survive the crossfire. He activated the beacon. A soft hum filled the cockpit as the signal pulsed into the void. There, he said. Now we just have to stay alive long enough for them to find us. The next minutes were a blur of maneuvers. Ethan ducked and twisted between moon fragments, using every bit of cover. Enemy ships kept firing, their bolts lighting up the darkness. Then, just as his shields dropped to a dangerous level, the scanner beeped. Multiple ships inbound. Large shapes emerged from hyperspace, sleek in silver with glowing insignias on their hulls. The Ledhari Royal Fleet. The lead ship opened fire instantly, cutting down one Syndicate ship in seconds. The others tried to flee, but the Royal Fleet interceptors chased them down. The comms crackled. Human vessel, this is Queen Erin of the Lythi Empire. Release your shields and prepare for escort. LRA gasped. That's her voice. My mother. Ethan lowered the shields. Moments later, two royal escorts flanked his ship, guiding them toward the flagship, a massive vessel that shimmered under the starlight. Inside the safety of the fleet, Ethan finally allowed himself to breathe. The danger wasn't gone completely, but they had reached the Queen's protection. LRA turned to him, her voice shaking with both relief and disbelief. You did it. You really did it. Not yet, Ethan said with a faint smile, but almost. As the flagship grew larger in the viewport, Lara's hands trembled. She had imagined this moment for years, but now that it was here, it felt unreal. Soon she would stand before her mother again, and Ethan knew that was a sight worth every risk they had taken. The flagship's docking bay opened like the gates of a grand palace, its silver arches glowing under the bright lights. Ethan guided his ship slowly inside, the escorts breaking off once he crossed the safety line. The bay was massive with royal guards in polished armor standing in perfect formation. Banners of the Ledhari Empire hung high above there, colors rich and proud. As the engines cooled, Ethan glanced at LRA. She was silent, staring at the sight before her, her hands twisted together in her lap, and he could see her chest rise and fall quickly. You're safe now, he said, softly. She's right here. LRA swallowed hard and nodded. When the ramp lowered, a small group of guards approached, their steps firm but respectful. At their head walked a tall, Ledhari woman with silver hair like Lara's, though streaked with wisdom and age. She wore an elegant crown that caught the light, but her eyes, sharp and bright, were fixed entirely on the girl beside Ethan. My queen, one of the guards announced. We have brought them. Before the formality could continue, LRA broke from her seat and ran down the ramp. Mom. Her voice cracked as it echoed across the bay. Mom, I'm back. He rescued me. The Queen's composure shattered. She dropped the ceremonial dignity in an instant and rushed forward, her long cloak sweeping behind her. She met Lara halfway, pulling her into her arms. The sound that left the Queen was not royal. It was the raw cry of a mother who had waited too long. Her arms tightened around her daughter as tears streamed down her cheeks. My child, my precious child, her voice shook. I thought I thought I had lost you forever. I thought you'd given up on me. LRA whispered, her own tears falling freely. But he came. He found me. She turned, slightly, pointing back toward Ethan, who stood quietly at the base of the ramp. The queen followed her daughter's gaze. For a moment, she simply looked at him, studying the human who had crossed. Dangerous space for a child. Then she stepped forward, still holding Laura. Close. Human soldier, she said, her voice steady now, but carrying deep emotion. You have done what no fleet, no army, no diplomat could do. You brought my daughter home. Ethan nodded respectfully. She's a brave one. Most of the work was hers. I just gave her a ride. The queen almost smiled at that, but her eyes glistened. You risked your life for her, for me, for someone not of your kind. That is a debt the Ledhari Empire will never forget. The guards around them bowed slightly, a rare gesture toward someone outside their species. Laura stepped back from her mother, just enough to look up at Ethan. You're not leaving yet, are you? I was planning to, he admitted. My job's done. No, the queen said firmly. Not yet. There is a place for you here, at least for a time. My people must hear this story, not as rumor, but from the one who lived it. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't used to attention, and the idea of standing before a royal court made him uncomfortable. But one look at Laura, her hopeful expression clear, and he sighed, lightly, all right for a little while. Over the next hours, the queen had her daughter examined by royal healers, ensuring there were no lasting injuries from her captivity. LRA never strayed, far from Ethan's side, as if afraid he might vanish if she looked away too long. Later that evening, the queen summoned the royal court. Nobles, advisors, and military leaders filled the grand hall. Towering windows revealed the endless stars outside, and the polished floor reflected the glow of hundreds of lanterns. The queen stood at the center, her hand resting gently on Lara's shoulder. My people, she began, her voice carrying across the hall. You know the story of my daughter's disappearance. You know the years of searching. Today that search ends. She has returned us alive, unharmed, and free. The hall erupted in a low, respectful murmur. The queen raised a hand, and the room fell silent. This would not have been possible without the courage of one man. She continued, a human soldier alone who faced the dangers of the Vorith, syndicate, the treachery of mercenaries, and even those within our own ranks who sought to keep her from me. He did not act for reward nor for power. He acted because it was right. She turned, gesturing for Ethan to step forward. He did so slowly, feeling dozens of eyes on him. Ethan, the queen said, in the name of the Ledhari Empire, I name you protector of the royal line. Wherever you go in our space, you will be honored and protected. Ethan gave a small, respectful bow. Thank you, your majesty. But all I really wanted was to keep a promise. The queen smiled, and Laura grinned beside her. That night, when the court was dismissed, LRA found Ethan on one of the palace's high balconies. The stars stretched endlessly above them, just like the night he had first heard the queen's message. You're really going to leave soon, aren't you? She asked quietly. I think so, he said. There's always someone else out there who might need help. She looked down for a moment, then met his eyes, then promised me one thing. You'll come back, not because of danger, just to visit. He smiled faintly. You've got a deal, princess. Below them, the palace lights shone bright against the darkness, a symbol of safety restored. Somewhere deep in the halls, the queen slept, knowing her daughter was home again. And far above, the stars waited for the next call, the next journey, and the next promise Ethan would